The Atari Corporation, which had been named and purchased by Jactramail and was part of the fifth generation of games consoles, was to develop the Jaguar with Flair 2 as a 64-bit system for the home market. The Jaguar was unveiled at the Chicago CES in 1993 and 20,000 units were available for the test launch.
Why do you believe your system is the most advanced in the universe? Let's review the numbers. Sega Genesis is 16 bits. 3DO is 32 bits. The Atari Jaguar is 64 bits. Which is more advanced? Clifford! With 64 bits, 3D graphics, real-world animation, and lightning speed that you can only get with Jaguar. Which is more advanced?
Can you repeat the question?
Jaguar! Jaguar! Jaguar!
The Jaguar was launched on November the 23rd, 1993 at $249, about £200, in New York and San Francisco, with the advert "Do the Maths." The national release was 6 months later. By the end of 1994 it is said to have sold 100,000 units. The Jaguar was struggling already due to poor release games and a lack of hardware. The CD add-on was released in 1995 to try and help bring the console back to life, but unfortunately it failed also. The Jaguar played on the fact that it was a 64-bit system. The claim never really stuck, as it became evident that the two chips Tom and Jerry executed 32-bit instructions, and Jaguar just added the two 32 bits to equal 64, and was ridiculed by the press, even when Atari proclaimed it used the 64-bit data bus for DRAM to the Tom and Jerry chips. The Tom chip was a 32-bit RISC chip with 4 kilobits of internal RAM. It had an object processor and a blitter. The Jerry chip was the 32-bit RISC similar with 8 kilobytes of internal RAM and also had sound capabilities, a digital signal processor. It had 2 meg of DRAM on a 64-bit bus. This was the system's BIOS. The Motorola 68000 was supposed to be used just as a general manager. It was a 16 32-bit controller clocked at 13.295 MHz, but unfortunately was used by many developers to cheat and develop ordinary game titles without using the power of the Tom and Jerry, which did really cause for a massive lack of decent software. This is the Jaguar Pro controller. It was redesigned due to criticism of the first controller. There's 3 extra face buttons and 2 trigger buttons. A much better controller than the original. In 1995, Sam Trammell declared the Jaguar to be more powerful than the newly launched Sega Saturn and nearly as powerful as the PlayStation. This could have been true if more time had been taken with the hardware to remove bugs and a better dev system for game creators. In late 1995, funding was drying up at Atari and they abandoned the Jaguar and liquidated the company and its stock and merged it with JTS Incorporated and later sold it to Hasbro Interactive. The Virtual Light Machine is a light synthesizer developed by Jeff Minter in 1990. It was used in the Jaguar CD and in later New-On DVD players. The light machine was similar to what could be seen in the Winamp and media players, but it was the one that was fitted into the Jaguar was the VLM-1, and that was obviously used in the Jaguar CD. This is what it does. It creates lovely little patterns in tune with the music, and was quite regarded very well at the time. This is my Jaguar GD drive. It's basically a ROM cart that has SD storage, and it has a front end so that you can load individual games. This is the front end of the cart. As you can see, you've got your basic directories for your cart, CDs, homebrew, demos. You click on the cart, it takes you into the next sub menu. There's all your games. Cool thing about this, it does give you a picture of the game art and a screenshot. That does have to be imported manually. A little bit of a pain in the arse to get used to it. It's not got any graphical front end to create those images. You have to do it from batch files, which if you're not particularly au fait with doing that, it can be a bit of a get to understand what's actually needed to be done to create it. But once you've got the hang of it, it's pretty good. Selected Defender 2000. Loading times are pretty good. I'd say that obviously this part is a little bit slower than the actual cart, because the cart needs loading it into its internal memory from the SD. So you've obviously got a little bit longer load times compared to a standard Jaguar game. But other than that, once you've started the ROM, it will load just like a normal cart. Beauty of this bit of kit is that obviously you can now play CD images on it. Been just introduced on the latest firmware. I must admit, Defender 2000 on the Jaguar is been quite a nice little game for me. I didn't realise how good it was. It obviously takes an original recipe. Defender back in the day was pretty bland looking, and it's given it a nice coat of new paint. It plays pretty good. It's fast. Can't really fault it from what it is. Relatively weak title, I suppose, when you compare it to what the likes of Sony and Sega were pumping out at the time. It's an old classic, which to me, yes, fair enough. I've got the nostalgia kick for this, but not a particular fan of this game, but I wanted to show the access times for the Jaguar CD. New feature with this firmware, works fantastically so far. Yeah, this game not particularly great, but it does show some full motion video which can help show off the streaming capabilities of this cart, and how it mimics the CD drive. I think is absolutely brilliant. This is footage from an unreleased game called Demolition Man. Predominantly, I played it on the 3DO. Obviously, very similar game to play. I think there were some different cutscenes that were a bit more footage for this game in the Jaguar version that I've seen. Lots of little snippets and things. The game streaming, the video streaming on the Jaguar was pretty impressive. I think it was slightly more grainy than the 3DO. I think the 3DO for the time did have some quite good full motion video scenes. But considering what this was, I'm not upset. I think it's done pretty well, really. This is a bit of a few little sneak peeks of footage that's been found over the years. Demolition Man, one of my favourite films. Brilliant Sylvester Stallone film. Nice long intro, gets you ready for the action, drops you onto the roof like it does the film, so the game pretty much takes off from where the film starts. Send a maniac to catch a maniac, as he says, and drops off on the bungee cord. I think what a cracking start to the game. Here he goes. Very similar, I think, start to the 3DO version, basically, which was fair enough. You expect that sort of thing. This is Alien vs Predator, obviously I think one of the most famous games on the Jaguar. I can remember waiting a full year, really, after the release of the Jaguar to actually get my hands on this. Weren't sure it was worth the wait. I do remember playing it and thinking the visuals are brilliant, and it really did show that in the hands of a decent developer, the Jaguar could produce something quite nice. I always found it a little hard. I think that's what probably predominantly put me off. It was a bit samey, the corridors just ended up just endless same corridors. But for what the developers have done in the time frame they had, I think it's pretty good. I think they probably could have done a bit more with it, but I think it was a year overdue by the time it released. So I think with the development tools that were on offer, because you read up on the Jaguar and you can see stories of developers and development hardware that was non-existent at the time. Atari was rapidly running out of money, and I think really only got enough money to produce the hardware. so developers were pretty much on their own. So considering what they've come up with in this, I think, you know, I can't really complain. Always played as the Marine for some reason, I don't know why. The Marine just seemed to fit. The Predator, I couldn't, you know, you had to be cloaked a lot of the time to get on a point, so it was just too complicated. And the Alien just seemed to be too easy to kill, so the Marine just seemed to fit better. I think it was me wanting to be that character in, like you say, in the first person shooter scenario. But yeah, when you're looking around, you know, the frame rate of moving around was just about got it right, and the frame rate just holds it enough to keep the sense of immersion there. You know, gun noises and stuff was pretty good. You know, the aliens, yeah, were enough. I think they used tiles. I think for what I read, it was all tile based, and these were all like pre-rendered images. But you know, it worked. You know, it's a shame that there wasn't more titles like this, and else the Jaguar actually might have stood a chance. Okay, so we'll call it a day for this one, and we'll see you with the next video. Thanks for watching.